No one wants it in League Two, do they? Just absolutely no one at any part of the table. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the League Two Lowdown. My name is Jordan Richards, and this is the review show from the fixtures that have just taken place the 28th of February, because we're recording this on the 1st of March. We're in March already. I mean, where's this year gone? And more importantly, at times, you're probably wondering, where's this season gone? I certainly get that impression anyway. There's a lot to get our teeth into, a lot of drama, red cards, and an interesting set of results, really, that is, which is having a big impact on the table at present. We're going to run through them all. We are joined by Luke Payne, as always. How's everything at your end?
Quite good, to be honest. I mean, obviously we had a huge game at the weekend. Looked like we might lose it, and all of a sudden we didn't. So that's always nice. So it gives me a lot more belief that we can, get it done by the end of the season. But I mean, we'll have to wait and see because F1's sort of dropping points all over the place at the minute. So at least it feels like we've not lost much ground. But we'll get on to that later.
Well, at least from my end, I'm recording this in quite a happy mood. Really good day in Nottingham yesterday. Just about sober enough to do this. But we'll talk a little bit about my day and that game at Meadow Lane a bit later. So the protocol, we're going to take a look at the 12 games real quickly. We're going to introduce a new segment to the review shows, and it's a preview. We're going to introduce a new segment to the Sunday shows of Luke's team of the week, because there's been so many times in which he puts it in our chat, and for the last few weeks it's just been ignored, really. I used to do graphics for them to post online, but I thought I'd give it its own platform. And there's 5 games in League Two on Tuesday night that we're going to take a look at very quickly as well. As we were looking at it before we started recording, you're sort of looking at it thinking, actually, that might be a little bit of a pivotal night for quite a few teams that are playing there. But of course, before we do start, as always, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you are new on YouTube. Make sure you go and download the podcast wherever you get it from. We really do appreciate your support, as always. Okay, let's start things off. We're going to run through these games in order. Let's start with the game on Friday night. Harrogate against Cheltenham. 2 sides near the bottom. Harrogate in the relegation zone coming into this game. Cheltenham, fair bit of points, or fair few points above them in the table, but it was a point apiece in this one. Both goals coming quite early on in the second half. Isaac Hutchinson putting the away side in front just a minute into the second half, but it was cancelled out a few minutes later through Cathal Hefferman, in which the points are shared in that one. Now, the result extends Harrogate's unbeaten run to 5 games, 2 wins and 3 draws in that time. Cheltenham's it's extended to 4, 3 wins, 3 draws, and a win in that one. I've got mixed feelings, certainly on Harrogate. I think for Cheltenham, I think it's a decent away point. It's another one. You can't really knock them in some of their away points recently against these type of teams. I know the Pit's a good point away at Barnet and Bromley. A little bit of a different challenge against a Harrogate side that are starting to get into their own a little bit, and they've gone and done that. I think they probably would have preferred to have won that to ensure that the gap is much bigger. I still don't think there'll be any sort of danger really come the end of the season or even in these next few weeks. Now for Harrogate, I was talking to you after the game. I've got mixed feelings on them. I think in terms of performance-wise, obviously we've got that one and the game against Bromley the other week as well. If they continue to play like that, they get out of it. It's as simple as that. My issue is against these sorts of teams, because ultimately Harrogate are still in the relegation zone at the time recording. I do think these are the sorts of games you've got to be winning, really. And I know it's quite interesting to say when they're 5 games unbeaten and they've beaten the likes of Cambridge and Barrow and have taken points of Chesterfield and Bromley. But these are sides around you that you've got to be picking up 3 points, because you do. These are sorts of. I do think these are the sorts of games you do look back on at the end of the season. If we picked up 3 points there, would it have been different? But at the same time, I'm caveating it as well that if they can remain with those performance levels, I know they've got a tricky next couple of games with MK Dons and Salford there next 2, but if they can maintain those levels, I think they get out of it. But yeah, I mean, they had chances to win it. Probably should have won it at the end, really. But yeah, yeah, it's a point apiece. I was a little bit more frustrated, really, with that.
I mean, I'm reluctant to criticize Harrogate too much on this one. Obviously, as we said, they're on a nice little unbeaten run at the minute, which sides at the bottom don't typically tend to get. It tends to be result here and then another couple of losses, result there, another couple. Uh, but if you can actually put together a little bit of a run in any capacity at that end of the table, it's gonna do you some good. And I mean, I'm hoping their run's about to come to an end because, as you've already alluded to, we're the next game. But I digress. It was a interesting game. It's like I watched parts of it, and it felt like it was a relatively open game. I feel like both sides had a lot of chances. And I think it was kind of a case of lack of quality with the finishing. It was kind of just the story of the evening, really, wasn't it? That wasn't. I feel like there were plenty of chances that probably should have been capitalized on a whole lot more. That first half is kind of summarized by what, 14 shots across both teams, not a single one on target. So it was kind of just one of those, and then straight away goal in the second half for both sides. It's one of those because yeah, I'm kind of in a similar boat in the sense that of the two, Harrogate obviously needed the win that little bit more because they are in the worst position. Yeah, simple as that. They are sat in the relegation zone right now. But I do have a lot of faith in them to turn that around, and actually, the fact that they've kept the unbeaten run going, and I think the key thing there is also the reintroduction of Stephen Duke McKenna, who was injured in early December, and he is still currently their top scorer with 5 goals, or joint top with Jack Muldoon, I think. Someone like that, who had star quality at the beginning of the season and was carrying them through games at times, having him back, that might be enough. That could be the boost they need for
It's a
me.
game changer. It's a game changer, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it is, entirely. And don't get me wrong, it might take him a couple of games to get going, although to be fair, he looked quite lively from what we saw of him straight away. But if they can get him firing again, even if it's just a couple of games, that could be enough for them. With Cheltenham, I'm not overly concerned. It's kind of a similar story. They've kept their unbeaten run going. M Yeah, you probably would have preferred to have another win amongst those sort of 4 results, but with the fixtures they've got coming up, I don't think they're gonna be overly bothered just as long as they're keeping their unbeaten run going. Because, like I said, the teams towards the bottom end don't typically tend to do these sorts of runs, so the longer they can keep that going, the better, really.
Yeah, I totally agree. Right, okay, let's get to Cambridge. I'm really intrigued to hear your thoughts on this one. Cambridge won, MK Dons won. Big game at the top of the table. It looked like Cambridge were going to walk away with 3 points. Shane Lavery putting the hosts in front in the 75th minute, only for the points to be shared right at the death through a 96-minute penalty converted by Aaron Collins. Um, it was a chance. I mean, Cambridge could have closed the gap on Bromley, and it would have cleared them. It would have put them clear of MK Dons if they had a hold out for the 3 points there. What would it have been? Five? Would they? I'm trying to work it out. It would have been 5 points clear, wouldn't it? If they'd have beaten you, I think. Is that right? Is my master? Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
think that's right.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm exposing my bad maths here. This isn't a good look. Um, but the points are shared. Only 2 points clear of MK Dons now. I think. We'll get your take. Get your take. I mean, I see that's quite a disappointing one for Cambridge right at the end. Personally, on face value.
I think it's one of those where coming into it, both teams probably would have taken the point. I'd kind of made a big thing of, if anyone wins this game, they're probably going to go on to go up. But the main thing, to be honest, was just don't lose it. Don't give one of your promotion rivals an extra 2 points uh, on top of the one you'd get for a draw. And obviously on yourselves as a team, that would obviously be a 3 point difference as well. But It was a bit of a weird game, really, to be honest. It was, well, a bit of a weird game by our standards. I felt like it was more of a kind of typical Cambridge style game in the sense that there weren't too many chances. I mean, you look at the first half particularly, there wasn't necessarily a lot going on. I think we restricted them quite well because they didn't have a shot on target. But then we equally only had a couple of chances, albeit they were ones we really should have put away. I know Mellish had a very good chance that was saved by Eastwood, and then Hepburn Murphy had a one-on-one that he somehow managed to miss the target with. All he had to do was remind the keeper, which isn't the first time I've said that this season because he's absolutely rapid. So one of those that are, you're kind of thinking, oh, that could have been a chance. Maybe we'll regret it. And by the time they scored, we're thinking, okay, we're definitely going to regret it. And to be fair to them, they took the goal well. A fast break. I personally feel like foul in the build-up, possibly. They don't show it on the highlights, sadly. But that's more relevant because I know Cambridge fans aren't necessarily too happy with the ref for the penalty that we did get right at the very end. Do I think it's soft? Possibly, yeah. But I don't know if he was trying to make up for a poor decision elsewhere, but it's one of those. Literally, very last minute, Aaron Collins. It took a while, obviously, because there were a few sort of protests and people trying to put him off and all the rest of it. But the ice in the veins, it was just to score that one, and then just the scenes afterwards as well, in the crowd. It was a very satisfying way to draw a game, to be honest, which felt odd because, like I said, going into that sort of going in at half time, we're thinking, you know, we've got to kick on to win this, and it would almost feel like a draw wouldn't have been that good. But I think overall, when you look at the bigger picture, our point is it is enough. It does the job, and it keeps us unbeaten, which is now a 10-game streak, I believe, and Cambridge maintain their home unbeaten run as well. So positive for both parties, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think there's pros and cons to both. I do agree with the fact that, yeah, I think it was important that neither side lost this game. And the fact that it's ended a draw, I mean, neither side have, and both sides are still in the automatic places come the end of play. Yes, albeit we'll touch on Swindon and Notts County as well, dropping points. But yeah, I think it's more just frustration from a Cambridge end. I mean, 96th minute. I mean, they're so close to picking up what would have been a massive 3 points. Well, in the season, really. Yeah, Aaron Collins. I mean, you say ice in the veins. I guess that's what you pay your big bucks for. To put it frank. So yeah, the points were shared there. Let's move on to one of the most informed sides in the league against a side that has been out of form. Shrewsbury had won their last 5 games coming into their game against Walsall, who were without a win in their last 7 heading into this one. Walsall won 2-1. It's very League Two, isn't it? Both of Walsall's goals scored by centre half Breezy Farquharson. Iwan Morgan did equalise for Salop just before half time, but Farquharson came up trumps in the second half in the 62nd minute to give Walsall that winning feeling back, in which they haven't had for a fair bit of time, with Shrewsbury ending the game with 10 men as well, with Josh Ruffle shown a straight red card. Is this the boost for Walsall that they need? Because I mean, they've got that win under their belt now that they've not had for a little bit. I said in the pod the other day that I think if they've lost this game, I think the pressure on Matt Sadler, I think, would have gone up immensely. But against the side in form, look, I think, yes, they've lost the game, and it's a pretty localish game as well, a big away end. But yeah, I think Shrewsbury could take a lot of courage. I think over these last few games. Yeah, or yes, they looked a bit disappointing. They've got, I mean, Chesterfield's their next game. Cheltenham and Bristol Rovers coming up. I mean, as I said the other day, I think they put themselves in a good position to avoid the drop, but it's certainly a much needed win for Walsall. It keeps them on tabs in this playoff picture, because you thought if they'd kept losing or not picking up wins in these games, there's a chance of them that they could have been siding further down the table. So it was important that they picked up that win as quick as they can, and they've done that as well in front of a big away end.
But yeah, just to get the result, just stop the rot, essentially. Their last win before that was 17th of January against Tranmere. So it has been a while. There's been a number of games there that they just haven't shown up for. And to be fair, this was one of those games where, again, it felt quite even, kind of chances for both. That there are quite a few games like that this week, actually, where it felt quite sort of cagey almost, but not necessarily in sort of like a way that prevents teams from having chances. Because I feel like both sides again did kind of have a few, but then obviously Walsall ended up relying on set pieces on this occasion. And to be fair, Priestley Farquharson is in good form in that regard, and that's now his third goal in 3 games. Obviously, he didn't score in the one against Dons, but brace here and then a goal previously as well. And he is actually now their second joint top scorer alongside Aaron Presley as well, which I found quite interesting. But still, it's just one of those. They needed a result any way they possibly could, and they've done that against the side that has been in really good form. To be fair, they've been winning 5 in a row, which is a good run of games. It's now also important that they back it up, and actually, I think they've got quite a good game to be able to do that, and they are one of the many teams that play on Tuesday, because there are 5 Tuesday games that we'll cover later on in the episode. But the next game's actually up against Fleetwood, who are proper outsiders for playoffs, if you even consider them to be part of that conversation at all. So it's a good opportunity for them to really sort of double down and get some momentum going again. And it at least gives them a fighting chance, because the longer they went without a win, you were just thinking, how bad could it possibly get? With Shrewsbury, it's obviously frustrating to lose the to lose the sort of winning streak, but at the same time, the performance wasn't that bad. It was just Walsall took one more chance than you on the day. That's going to happen sometimes, and actually, when you've taken 15 points from your 5 games before that one, you probably don't mind it quite as much. And I'd back them to maintain their performance levels. It's not like they're under that much threat anymore. They've pulled away from the whole relegation battle. They can just enjoy their football again. The only other thing to mention really was the red card, which I think is probably a bit of a frustrating one for Josh Ruffles. He wasn't. There wasn't much intention in it. It wasn't malicious or anything. He was just trying to make up for his own mistake. But it's just an unfortunate one for him to have to deal with. But it does mean someone else can get an opportunity to step up for that Shrewsbury side and hopefully get them another result in the next game.
Let's head over to Swindon. Well, they've dropped more points, haven't they? They've drawn 1-1 at home to Bristol Rovers. The Gas took the lead just before half-time. A beauty of a goal from Kane Thompson-Sommers. I know that's one that you're quite pleased about. That was cancelled out in the second half through Ollie Palmer. And that's how it finished. It doesn't mention on here, but it's also worth mentioning that Ian Holloway was shown a red card in the game, which I personally found quite amusing. Yeah, local derby-ish, big away following from Bristol Rovers from the stuff I've seen. Only one win in the last 4 for Swindon, which is not horrific. I mean, the draw at Bristol Rovers, but I guess if they want to be up there, I guess even though there has been a little bit of an upturn with Bristol Rovers, a little bit, for a side that's chasing automatic, even in a local derby, really, where you probably talk about, sort of form goes out the window. I guess at this point, these are sort of games you've got to be winning. I think there's positive signs for Bristol Rovers. We did touch on their form away from home in the week, and I think they could take a lot of encouragement going to a side and playing, putting in the performance that they have done and picking up a half decent result. They obviously still need a few more. They're 4 points above the relegation zone. But again, there's more positive signs really. Against a pretty interesting run of games coming up. They've got a couple of tough games, but they've also got a couple of games in which they could probably go into and get a few results. I don't think that's the worst result in the world for them.
Yeah, I mean, from a Bristol Rovers perspective, I think that's a very good point. Um, I am gonna go back to the goal and just credit to, well, one kind of current Don and one former Don. Ellis Harrison's thinking to take the free kick quickly, and then Thompson Thomas just running off the pitch, cutting inside and bang, bottom corner goal. Uh, Very impressive. I'm quite glad we've got he's only on loan, so we can have him back if he keeps doing that. Um, but no, it was a very good move, and it had a couple of decent chances in that game. To be fair, some Bristol Rovers and Fabrizio Caven had one as well that he possibly could have done a little better with. Um, but actually, I think it was more just the nature of how they've got themselves through this game, because in my opinion, I still think Swindon had the better of the chances in this game, and obviously they got themselves back into it, but they had a number of, other chances, Swindon, that they could have put away. So to, take that much to take that many shots against you and still sort of come away with a point against a team that's battling for automatic promotion, I think that's good going. And every point counts when you're at the wrong end of the table. Oh, well, both ends of the table, obviously, but even more so when you're at the bottom of the table because teams don't pick up points quite as often. And that's one that I think they'll be able to look back on, assuming they survive, and go, you know what? That's one of the reasons, because that is a very, very good point they've managed to secure against a side that was in decent form. Well, not form, but that was putting in a decent performance, I should say, rather. So yeah, impressed with Bristol Rovers, and just to you know have a good performance on the road was absolutely necessary, especially because they've got a couple of more away games coming up against Barrow and Bromley in the coming weeks. Swindon, a little bit more concerning, maybe just one of those days at the office where it's not quite going in for them. Um, Obviously, they do need to get their streak going, because for them, it is kind of a wasted opportunity. When Cambridge and Dons are playing each other and someone's got to drop points, you've got to overtake at least one of them. The fact that we drew, you could have taken could have easily gone up into those top three positions, but I don't know. It might just have been one of those days. With Swindon, they obviously still have a lot of quality. They're kind of the team that you're going to be keeping a close eye on in the next sort of week or so, especially their next game against Crawley, which will be interesting for reasons I might mention again later.
It was a playoff battle between Barnet and Chesterfield at the Hive. It was the Bees that came out on top in this one. The early goal of the game scored by Namadi off a ball in the 65th minute. High praise from D. Brennan in his interview after the game for the midfielder, which can only give him confidence. That result has put Barnet level on points with Chesterfield. Not ideal for the Spyrites, really. Really good for Barnet, though. Obviously keeps them in this conversation. Back-to-back wins for them now. Of course, after beating Harrogate, not Harrogate, Accrington in the week. So good result for them. As for Chesterfield, that's their six-match unbeaten run ended, which, as I mentioned in the week, involved a win, draw, win, draw, win, draw. No win this time as they fall to defeat.
This game sort of had a similar sort of vibe to the Harrogate Cheltenham game, in my opinion, in the sense that there were lots of chances in this game sort of throughout, but again, it was kind of the lack of quality with the finishing that let both sides down, really. I'd say Barnet probably did have the better of it ever so slightly, just in terms of the quality of chances they were creating, and it did take them a few attempts, but they did eventually manage to get one into the back of the net. But if I'm looking at the first half, from a sort of general point of view, no shots on target for either team, which is exactly the same as the Harrogate Cheltenham game as well. So it was just one of those. But still, this is the sort of, well, it's the result that I think Barnet needed. Obviously, a couple of weeks back, they had that whole sort of heavy defeat to Colchester, and just to come up against another, uh, potential playoff rival and take 3 points in like, yes, it was narrow, but it doesn't really matter how you win, just that you win. and they've managed to do that. So credit to them, and it brings them level on points as you've mentioned, and it also brings Chesterfield's unbeaten run to an end. And interestingly, their game to bounce back on is going to be Colchester in another one of the Tuesday fixtures, which is absolutely crucial. We seem to be getting tons of these games at the minute. I don't know. It's an interesting one with Chesterfield. I'm interested to see how they react, because I feel like they're the sort of side that have put together these sort of miniature unbeaten runs every now and then. Are they going to be able to bounce back straight away and start another one now? Uh, it obviously remains to be seen. It's not the most sort of disheartening in terms of the performance because, like I said, I think they were involved in this game. It was just a case of Barnet just took their chance and Chesterfield didn't. So it's just one of those. A good win for Barnet overall.
Should probably mention as well that result drops Chesterfield out of the playoff zones for now. Let's head over to Barrow. They played Gillingham and their hearts were broken in the 103rd minute, 90 plus 13 on the clock when Robbie McKenzie, I have to say, he took his goal really well. I did see this goal. Through all those bodies in the box, the way he's managed to get a touch and then find the bottom corner, I think that was really good. A cracking away win for Gillingham. An out of form Gillingham side as well, having lost 5 of their last 6 games. And to find that winner right at the death, well, it's certainly pleasing for their fans. As for Barrow, a very poor performance, 5 shots not on target in the game, and very abject again. And you almost get you'll probably mention this, but I personally get the feeling I feel sorry for Dino Marmia a little bit with this group of players. I think there was 1 or 2 decisions in the game as well. I know that Malcolm went off with an injury, and it sounds like a bad one, Jovan Malcolm. And we'll have to see how that happens. But like I said, it does sound bad. But yeah, absolutely nothing to get behind once again for Barrow. And I don't know. I know they beat Colchester in this run, but if you're looking at it from this way, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 defeats in their last 10 games. Hugely worrying. And that performance, I think, confirms it as well, really.
Well, I mean, how many ways do you want to lose a game of football? We were heavily critical of the Fleetwood loss and the way that happened, but to concede that late on, that just can't happen twice. This was supposed to be almost like a bounce back game from the last one. So to lose it in that manner and just switching off from a corner, that just can't happen. I appreciate that the performance was kind of flat from the off. If we're being totally honest, the first half was pretty much just controlled by Gillingham. If we're going to be brutally honest about it, I think Gillingham were probably the more proactive of the 2 sides in terms of their attacking play. Obviously, as you've mentioned there, Barrow didn't have a shot on target. 4 of the shots they did have were outside the box. So it's not like the quality of chances they were creating were any good. There are very few things that were positive about that performance. I will give Will Stanway a bit of credit because he made 1 or 2 very impressive saves. I think that was a personal performance he needed to come back. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if the team performance isn't there, and it wasn't. I think the concerning thing for me is that this is how they're performing against teams that don't necessarily have much to play for. Teams that aren't going to be fighting quite as hard as the promotion sides or your fellow relegation rivals. If this is how they are against the middle of the road teams, how are they going to cope against anyone that has something to play for? I don't think it's Dino's fault because he's come into a situation that is incredibly tricky uh, to navigate. I mean, these players are clearly on the floor. He's got very little to work with. But the fact that even a new manager hasn't brought some kind of bounce or some kind of belief back into the side, that bit I do find very concerning. Like I said, I don't blame Dino for it at all, but there is something in the culture at that football club right now that doesn't sit right with me, and I think they have every reason to be worried going into the final leg of the season.
Well, we'll probably touch on it in the week, but their next 3 games are Cheltenham, Bristol, Rovers, and Accrington. If they're going to turn it up, they've got to turn it in those ones, really. It's as simple as that, and especially after a performance like that. Bromley, their unbeaten record at home is still intact. A 2-1 home victory against Accrington Stanley. We were looking at the red card for Donald Love for about 10 minutes because the angle wasn't particularly great. I'm still a little bit inconclusive, but I can see a little bit of foot on Michael Cheek's leg. Speaking of Michael Cheek, he converted 2 penalties in the game in that one. That was after an equaliser as well from David Abimbola as well. I mean, look, Cheek put them 1-0 up. Abimbola with the equaliser, and then Cheek in the second half converted another penalty. It stops the somewhat run of 3 straight draws for Bromley, back to winning ways for them after a few games without a win. Accrington, 4 defeats in their last 5 games. Their playoff hopes have faded quite quickly. And another red card as well. I mean, we're talking about discipline at the minute. I mean, Accrington, if you're looking at it, 4 red cards in their last 5 games. I mean, you probably argue 1 or 2 in that one. I think you probably got to look at that Accrington one again. I think it looked like there was a bit of leg on it, if that makes sense. But again, it's the lack of discipline there is not a great sign either way. You can't be getting your players sent off. It's as simple as that. And they've taken a hit over these last few weeks.
It's not even just the sendings off. They've then gone and conceded 2 penalties in the
And that,
same
yeah,
game.
yeah.
Like that kind of record can't stand. In terms of this specific red card, I do feel for Donald Love at least a little bit because there's clearly no intention to anything he's done in with that one. I think it's a case of he's literally just trying to run over and get the ball and maybe just catch his cheek on the way through as he's gone to try and pick up the ball as well. So it's kind of one of those where it's a bit unlucky, but yeah, it's just very frustrating and typical for Love in particular because he just returned from a 2-match suspension as well. So which I believe would have been for too many yellow cards. I think he must have had about 10 for that to have happened. But still, obviously, with a red card happening that early, it changed the game very much in Bromley's favour. It did obviously take penalties for them to break through, but they had a lot of chances in this game. I would have been worried if they hadn't. Well, if they hadn't, just finished the game off. Although I did find it interesting that despite going behind the first time, Accrington then went and scored a set piece a couple of minutes afterwards. So a good fighting spirit in that regard. It's just this whole discipline thing that they need to sort out because you can't be playing games with 10 men pretty much every game. It's not going to work out for you, especially when you're playing the league leaders that haven't lost in 16 games now. You know,
You're always going
it's
to be up against it, aren't you?
yeah,
Especially
exactly that. Yeah, and as I've kind of alluded to, there probably had so many sort of big chances. So yes, there's kind of an element of frustration that they didn't take more from open play or from their set pieces. It had to be penalties, but it doesn't matter how you win, just that you win. And they found a way to get the job done. It's probably their most convincing performance in quite a while. But you kind of have to caveat that with the fact that they were playing against 10 men for most of it. But either way, there's positives to take from it for Bromley, and it'll be interesting to see if that kind of inspires them to get back to their best form because their level is going to have to be more like it was in that game if they're going to maintain that streak.
How big of a result can this be for Salford City? 1-0 win away at Colchester. I mean, Salford coming into this game on the back of 4 straight victories, but they win at Colchester, as I say. Cole Stockton with the only goal of the game in the 78th minute. That's put them back in the playoff places. And for them, they're hoping that, because they've had this run of defeats that they've had done. They're probably hoping that this is the start of getting a few more to try and cement their playoff place. I think still got a couple of games in hand, and it could be interesting if they go on a run, if they pick up some of those points. But obviously, talk about automatic promotion is obviously taking a hit in the last few weeks, and rightly so. Disappointing one for Colchester, losing it. They've lost ground on Salford again in this one. 6 points, 6 points adrift now of the playoff places for them, and they've been a little bit inconsistent of late, actually, of Colchester, which is obviously why they're in the position that they're in at the minute. And I guess losing this, there's still a fair bit of time to go. A lot of twists and turns to come. Their fixtures over these next few weeks are not the greatest. Actually, there's a couple of tough ones in there, but you sense that if they are going to make the playoffs now, that they have to start getting a run together themselves, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think with Colchester, it's kind of a case of maybe the injuries are finally starting to hinder them at least a little bit. Because obviously, for the longest time, they were finding ways to get results regardless. But it is kind of at a point where it feels like they have been hit hard. And actually, you look at their attacking lineup for that game, it wasn't the most convincing, and that translated pretty much perfectly in the performance as well. Not a single shot on target in the first half for Colchester. They just didn't have enough of an attacking threat. I do think they had one very, very good chance that I think Kyrie's Lisby should have put away, just a rebound from Teddy Bishop's shot. But aside from that, they didn't create much. I think the only sort of saving grace there is that Harry Anderson made his return in that game, and that could be a huge difference maker in the coming weeks for them. But unfortunately, it wasn't enough for this game. I don't think Salford were necessarily overly impressive. Definitely not their most sort of exciting performance, but it was a well fought game on their part. And they just sort of kept slowly turning up the heat until something came off for them. And in the end, it was just a little run down the wing, ball across, and that will do it. But yeah, it's just one of those that just to get a result like that is absolutely huge for them. I think especially at this moment in time where performances haven't been great, I think that's one they can take a lot of confidence from. And a phrase I used earlier from the other games, stop the rot, and they've done it in a game that is quite an important one to do it in as well. So credit to them, and it'll be interesting to see how they can build on it now.
Another week, another defeat for Tranmere Rovers. They've lost 2-1 away at Crewe Alexandra, very much in form at the minute themselves. It was Tranmere that took the lead, though. James Plant just before half-time putting Tranmere in front, but that was undone in the second half through Connor Thomas's 77th minute goal. He had the whole of Gresty Road to get that shot off, really. And then the winner coming in the 91st minute through Josh March. We could talk about the Tranmere defending and marking, but I've got to say, I did see that goal. It is beautiful soccer. I've got to say, it was a joy to watch. And if you're a Crewe fan watching that, you'd have loved that. It was proper teamwork, that goal, and it's a really good way to win it. I mean, they win again, very much in the playoffs now. Themselves on 56 points. They're in 6th. They're going very well. Tranmere are not going very well. What's it? 9 defeats in their last 10, I think that is. 7, 8. Yeah, 9 defeats in their last 10. Their early win was against Crawley. I mean, a side that are below them. And this worrying run of form continues, really. We'll probably touch on it more in a little bit, but they've got a big game against Newport County on Tuesday night where nothing less than a win will do, really. And I think the pressure is only going to get is only hotting up on Andy Crosby's future again for, I think, the capitulation again, really. Right at the end of the game where they were winning for quite a bit of it until it happened. Great character from Crewe, though, I've got to say, and that's a sort of result that, despite in the circumstances, gets you in the top 7.
Exactly that. They just again, it's just finding a way to win, and it's that character and that belief. Crewe had everything there that Tranmere were missing uh, within their squad, that kind of energy. And I appreciate Tranmere obviously went ahead in the first place, which is sort of a rarity in itself recently. But they scored from their own only shot on target in the first half. But the rest of the performance was it left a lot to be desired. I'm gonna close in a little bit more on the equalising goal because that one really annoyed me from a neutral standpoint. What are they doing? It was a totally unchallenged cross for Tommy O'Reilly. Someone's got to at least sort of make an effort to move towards him, make his life feel a bit harder. And then it was a free cross straight to Connor Thomas, stood in the middle of the box, totally unmarked. It's not like he was making this insane run with trickery or anything. He just appeared in the box and it's a goal. Like, they had players free to cover him. There was not a single excuse to be leaving someone in that kind of space. Um, it's the sort of defending you wouldn't even expect at, Sunday League level. That is the most obvious thing. If there is a guy standing in the box and he's onside, go mark him. Like, come on. It's the absolute basics they're getting wrong, and that shows with some of the other highlights of this game as well. Because it's yet another game where they've had a player essentially just pass the ball to a striker to send them through on goal for the opposition. I think this time it was Jason Lowe doing that, but they very luckily got away with it. But they're giving themselves no opportunity to win these games at all. The level of these mistakes is just ridiculous. It can't happen. And yes, I appreciate they've got this huge buffer um, that's sort of protecting them from relegation. But another month or two of these fixtures, and I've said that a couple of times already on previous pods, another month or two of results like that, performances like that, they will find themselves creeping into that battle. Because when you've got teams like Bristol Rovers and Harrogate and so on that are prepared to fight for every single point, they will catch you eventually. You have to pick up at least a few points here or there just to protect yourselves, right? I'm seeing no belief in this Tranmere dressing room at the minute, and well, a lack of desire is killing them. It really is, and things can't carry on like that. They just can't.
Honours even, it finished between Fleetwood and Newport County. Um, but let's be honest, this was a game that was heavily dominated by Fleetwood. Listen to this: 71% possession, 25 shots, 7 on target, compared to Newport's 29% possession, 5 shots, none on target. I mean, it took a bit of an inspirational performance from Jordan Wright, made some crucial saves in that game, and if he didn't make those games, then we'd be talking about a Newport defeat. But I think for Fleetwood, you were talking about potential outsiders for a playoffs if they get a run of form going. This is where I mean about the inconsistencies and all that. I mean, they huffed and puffed, but they couldn't find a way through. And if you want to be challenging, I think these are sort of teams you've got to be beating, really. I know the bottom of the league, but I think from Newport's end, it's certainly a point gained. I mean, they were battered in the game, but ultimately, we were also looking at this game, thinking, they've had a tough run of games. You're thinking Fleetwood, right? Okay, there's, they're mid-table. If we're going to pick up points, if we're going to go and start winning games, it's got to be against these sides in the table. And yeah, they were battered overall, really, without losing the game. So at the same time, you could probably take it as a point gained, which is how I see it. But at the same time, if this is against sides that are, let's be honest, that are not in the chasing pack for the playoff places or automatics, then it's not really great, isn't it? Like I said, they've got a huge game against Tranmere on Tuesday, but then they've also got another set of tricky games coming up between Colchester, Barnet, Bromley, Walsall. They're teams that have got something to play for. I know their run of form or their run of games around April time is much better where they are playing sides in and around them. But yeah, it's not a good look despite picking up a point, I think.
From a Newport perspective, I mean, I know we're saying a point gained, but I feel like it's more a point gained for Jordan Wright than it is for Newport. If I'm being totally honest, he carried them that game entirely. They gave him very little protection. I think he's made about 7 saves, and he is the only reason they've not lost that game. He has spared the blushes of every single one of those outfield players, and I hope they're aware of that because genuinely that performance was woeful. They didn't have a single shot on target in the entire game, and it's not like Fleetwood's defense is particularly good. It's kind of just your kind of standard run-of-the-mill League Two side at the minute. They should have at least been able to threaten them at least a tiny bit, but they showed nothing, absolutely nothing. It's just one that I think from a Fleetwood perspective, it's obviously 2 points short for them. Um, Obviously they created lots of chances, and some of those were denied by Wright. So, and like I've said, credit to him for that. Um, but it's one of those I feel like they probably should have put away. I was kind of saying on the last episode, well, hold on, look at Fleetwood's run of games. They have an outside chance of playoffs. Well, that's not really the start they needed if they were going to go and do that. It's not entirely gone because with so many teams involved in the race, it only takes a run of games and you're straight in there. But it's not the start they would have wanted. I think it's just one of those days in front of goal. For whatever reason, it's just not going in the back of the net. Partially due to a keeper, partially some of the finishing for some of their other chances where they just haven't hit the target. Um, but still, yeah, it's just a disappointing kind of game for me, really, to cover. Like Fleetwood would have hoped for more from it. From a performance point of view, Newport definitely should have hoped for more from it. Obviously, they'll be grateful for the point, and rightfully so. But for me, it's luck more than judgment.
Grimsby Town got back to winning ways after their bitterly disappointing defeat to Bristol Rovers last week, and it was a poor performance. Went to Meadow Lane against Notts County and came away with a 1-0 victory. The early goal of the game scored in the 85th minute by Charles Furnham. Notts County did finish the game with 10 men. Liam Lovely sent off in the 76th minute for a very debatable red card. I was surprised that the ref pulled out a red at the time. Look, I was literally right up at the top end of the away end, so my view on it was very limited. I didn't think much of it. I saw the red card get pulled out. I'm thinking, oh, okay, you must have seen something that I haven't. I've had a look back, and it's very debatable, really. But what isn't debatable is the goal to win it from Vernon. It was always going to be a little bit of quality to win the game, and Vernon from about 20, 25 yards. It's his typical trademark, cut inside, and he's ended up beating Belshaw into the bottom corner in front of a big away end, and I thought it was a proper good away performance, a lot more solid to what it was last week at Bristol Rovers. I thought Dave Artell got the game plan spot on. We went there with the objective of frustrating Notts County because we know obviously at Meadow Lane, tough place to go, and when they do get on top, they're hard to stop. We know they've got some very good players that can hurt teams. I mean, look, they put 5 past Tranmere last week, so we know that was always going to have a difficult task. But I think for the large part, we kept them at bay pretty well. We had a couple of heart-in-mouth moments. I think Tom Pender just about missed a cross from Jody Jones that just went wide of the far post. So yeah, we did have to ride our luck a little bit, but I thought effort-wise, I thought it was as good as away performance as you're going to get without creating particularly too much. But again, it's just that moment of quality to go and win the game. First win against Notts in quite a long time as well, and yeah, it was a really good day. I was pleased with the performance, and we've got another tough game coming up on Tuesday night against Salford. Obviously, it's a disappointing one for Notts as well, considering the result at Cambridge MK Dons. They'd have loved to have capitalised on it, but not to be in this one. But yeah, it's a really good afternoon for Grimsby.
Absolutely. You go to an automatic promotion contender. You go to their home ground and you take away all 3 points at a crucial point of the season. what more could you possibly want from it, really? Obviously, yes, there's a bit of fortune with the red card decision. I do think it is soft, if I'm being honest. Um, but still, you do kind of make your own luck at times. And to be fair, the goal when you had the opportunity to get into that position, Burnham took it well, and I know that you had one or two other big chances there as well. Notts also had a couple of big chances, and they just didn't take them. And ultimately, that's football, isn't it? It's just who takes their chances on the day, and on this occasion, it's turned out to be Grimsby. The thing I'm actually going to look at is how this game going forward actually impacts Notts a bit more, because obviously, the kind of ongoing story with them is no Alessandro Jata, he's just missing for now. They now don't have Leon Lovers as well, which leaves them with one striker, which is Matt Dennis. Now, don't get me wrong, Matt Dennis is good, but he's not typically a 90-minute player. I did a little bit of research beforehand. He's played 33 games this season. He's only actually played the full 99 times, which isn't too many. Most of those were right at the beginning of the season when he was obviously in inspired form and became top scorer of the division for a while. It's not the best scenario to be left in. Obviously, I've sort of had similar concerns with Dons. It's just we've obviously got a few more players covering in that area of the pitch. But I do think it's going to create an interesting dynamic for Notts going into their next, one or two games, however long Lavu's out for. It could have quite a significant impact potentially. Well, obviously you have to wait and see on that, but I'm just going to leave that there as a little bit of a cliffhanger going into the next games.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good day for us, and I was really pleased we walked away with 3 points there. Just a quick one as well from that game as well. Full credit to the Notts County fans and obviously our fans in the 19th minute for the applaud for Cameron Walsh on the day, which would have been his 19th birthday, just over 2 years on from the tragic accident which took his life as well as his father's. Really touching as well, and we'll always remember Cam as one of our own. And full credit to everyone that took part in that applause as well. We really appreciate it. Last but not least, let's touch on the game at Boundary Park. Oldham beating Crawley 2-0. Very good day at the office for Oldham. Again, Jack Stevens with a brace in this one. And 3 straight wins for the Latics now. 4 unbeaten if you're counting that 1-1 draw against Fleetwood. Thoroughly deserving of that victory as well. I think the only positive Crawley can take was the fact that it was only 2-0. I think they've got their goalkeeper, Chapman, to thank for that. Their run of form isn't great either. I know they had like a bit of a spell, was it like the end of January when they brought all those new players in, that things were starting to look up again. But ultimately, you look at it now, 4 defeats in their last 6 again. And they're still looking very much over their shoulder. And again, they're another side. If that's the performance that they're putting in, it doesn't bode well in the long term. It's another deeply alarming one, as much as it was a very good display for Oldham, and they've picked up 3 deserved points on the back of it.
You could almost repeat everything I said about Newport's performance. You could probably say it about Crawley's, except they didn't get the result. Jacob Chapman, I felt bad for him. He's made 9 saves. Again, absolutely carried them. And he was the only one that bothered to show up, really. The outfield players may as well have just stayed in the dressing room, to be honest, because they practically just weren't there. It was all Oldham from start to finish. And there was only ever going to be one winner. If there was one, Oldham obviously took their chance as well. And particularly Jack Stevens, who I think is really starting to find his rhythm now. From his last 9 games, that's now 5 goals and 2 assists. That is a very good record, especially if he can maintain it in the coming weeks. You do have to give credit to Oldham because, it's a thoroughly professional performance. You can only play what's in front of you, and I think they've done so very, very well. It's just Crawley are becoming a very concerning side again. And I was kind of waving the red flags in January whilst all of this was going down, all of their business. And as you say, things did improve for a little bit, but I don't think that that much change has actually happened in terms of the culture of the club, the way it operates, the way they play. I've not seen enough to convince me that they are a side that necessarily want to actually stay in this division. You need to see a certain level of fight going into every single game they play, and there just wasn't any of that against Oldham. Absolutely none of it. So yeah, it's just one of those. There needs to be some kind of reaction to that. You cannot perform like that. Well, even once is bad, but if they play like that again in the very next game, that can't run. It just can't. Yeah, it's one we'll have to keep an eye on. It makes the relegation battle interesting, though. I'll give it that much.
Crawley's next 3 games: Swindon, Colchester, Barnet. Yeah, not the nicest run again either. Yeah, there's not really much to say. Look, it's a week. Look, it's one of. Well, there's going to be plenty more twists and turns throughout the table. What in all places, drop points for sides in the automatic racing pack. Most of the playoff teams winning yesterday, other than Colchester, who did lose to Salford, and then it's a case of. I mean, we were calling this a pretty big week for the sides in the bottom 4 in particular, where they're playing sides in and around mid-table, and yet none of them have won. It's like no one wants to be in the top 3. No one wants to be in the top 7 because we're all cancelling each other out, and everyone wants to get relegated. It's basically how I'm seeing this at the minute. But look, Luke, let's get on to your segment, or new segment, I should say. Your team of the week. I'm going to ask you to do this as quick as possible because I'm conscious of time. We've got the midweeks to run through, in which we're going to do that again as quick as possible. But tell us who you've included this week.
Right, I'm going to absolutely rattle through these and just list them off. So I hope you're listening keenly. Probably how I'll put it. So in goal, I've gone for Jordan Wright of Newport. To absolutely no one's shock. Right back, I've gone Harvey Rodgers of Grimsby. My centre back, Priestley Farquharson of Walsall, and Danny Collinger of Barnet. Left back, Jake Bassey of Swindon. Right mid was my player of the week, which is Jack Stevens of Oldham. I also have Tommy O'Reilly in that midfield. I know he's playing out wide, but I've put him in centre mid to make it work. Obviously, of Crewe, Kane Thompson Sommers, Bristol Rovers, Charles Vernon of Grimsby completing midfield, and my 2-man strike force of Michael Cheek of Bromley and Mike Fondop of Oldham. Now, my manager is a bit tricky to pick because the results were a bit weird this week, but I've opted to go with one of the managers that grinded their result out quite well. So I've gone for Carl Robinson of Salford.
I'd have argued Dave Bartel personally, but that's the bias in me. But I guess for
You
the
got 2
context of
players.
they needed to. Well, I guess in the context of the fact they needed a win against another playoff chaser. Well, then again, we've beaten a side away from home who are automatic promotion chasing. So, but look, let us know your thoughts. Yeah, it's a tricky call, but that's just my thoughts. Right, there's 5 games on Tuesday night that we're going to rattle through, and we are just going to rattle through them. I'll just quickly run through them really quickly. Bromley are back at home. They've got Oldham, and I'll tell you something now. I've just been looking at the table. If you're saying Fleetwood could be underdogs for this playoff place, what about Oldham? They played a game less than them. And they're on the same amount of points, and they're doing all right recently. So if you're going to go off that logic, I think you've got to include them at the minute. Of course, they do have the task of breaking Bromley's unbeaten home record, which is a tricky task in itself. Chesterfield have got Colchester. So again, it's another big game, and probably one if you're Colchester, you're probably hoping you don't lose this really, because you're just going to lose more ground if you do lose it. To them. I mean, Chesterfield currently sitting just outside the person 8, 4 points clear of Colchester coming into this one, who are sat 12th. So, yeah, pretty big game for them. It's a big game as well for both Grimsby and Salford, as both of them meet at Blundell Park. A lot of travelling that Salford have had to make, but it's a trip to North East Lincolnshire for them. And it's a big game for both sides again, really. If Grimsby was to win that, we'll go level on points with Salford. But if Salford was to win, they'll be 6 points clear of us, which is not a great. Basically, it's another big game really, in which you're looking at it on that end. Pretty big game at the bottom, really. Newport Tranmere. For Newport, I think if they are going to have any chance of surviving, this is the game they've got to win. And as for Tranmere, I think to arrest this awful run, really, and to ensure that they're not in the conversation themselves in a few weeks. This is a game in which they absolutely have to be winning. And I feel like a win is paramount for both these sides, really, as it could be damaging for either of them. I think, certainly in Tranmere's case, if they was to lose this game, I can't see how Andy Crosby survives, to be quite honest, with this run of form. And Walsall have got Fleetwood. I know we just touched on Fleetwood there, obviously outsiders for the playoffs. Walsall, it's a chance for them to... They've got to build on that win now. I know that they've had that poor run, and there's still question marks over Matt Sadler's head, but it'll be good if they answered it, with a strong home performance against Fleetwood. And I mean, look, it makes things interesting if Fleetwood was to win that as well, as if we are judging, like I say, we're outsiders for playoffs, as you're saying. But you also sense if they were to not win this game, well, if you are to lose it, then obviously those outside claims will only grow. Go quieter, really. But you sense it's another big game for Walsall because, I mean, look, they're just outside the playoffs as it is at the minute themselves. I mean, they're 2 points behind it, but it's backing up a win in the last game against Shrewsbury. Right, I'm going to run through the games really quickly, and we're going to do the results because I'm conscious of time. Bromley at home to Oldham. 1-1.
That's what I was going to say. That's annoying. I'm going to copy you anyway. 16-game unbeaten run for Bromley. Oldham won unbeaten in 4 and have won the last 3. So a draw makes sense.
Chesterfield, Colchester. It's at Chesterfield. 2-1 Chesterfield.
I think I'm agreed in the sense that I'm expecting Chesterfield to win it. I feel like Colchester's returning players aren't quite going to be up to speed just yet. They desperately need a result. I don't think they're going to get it. I am going to go 1-0 Chesterfield.
Grimsby, Salford might be my bias here. 2-1 Grimsby. I think this is. We knew this was going to be a big week. We've got Bromley, of course, next Saturday as well at Brundle Park. We've got 2 big home games coming up. But yeah, I'm going to back my boys as I always do.
I feel like I'm
other than last week, I thought we'd lose to Notts County. I should probably say.
Well, yeah, apart from that, so maybe should be predicting more losses. I don't know. Anyway, I mean, Salford's performances still aren't the most convincing. I know they just won 1, but I am going to back Grimsby. I'm going to say 2-0.
Newport, Tranmere. I'm going to go 1-0 Newport. I think that's just where they are at the minute. I think with Tranmere, just a side that are woefully out of form and got no confidence. But I guess the same could be said for Newport, really. I mean, they're coming into this game in a worse position, but I mean, they're at home. Yeah, I'm going to back Newport for a scrappy win, but it's the points at this stage that matter to them.
I mean, in terms of performances, if Newport don't at least react with a good performance in this game, then they may as well just start setting up to play National League football. This is the game they have to be up for. Tranmere, I am not convinced they can beat anyone at the minute, to be honest. So I am going to lean towards Newport because I think this is an absolutely crucial game for them. I'm going to say 2-0 Newport.
And for Walsall, Fleetwood, I'm going to say Walsall back this up with a 2-1.
Yeah, it's a tricky one to call. I still have concerns over Walsall's goal scoring, or lack thereof. Fleetwood are an interesting side. I might sit on the fence with this one, to be honest. I do think that Walsall are the more likely of the two to win it. But no, I am going to sit on the fence 1-0.
Okay, and that is us done for this one. This has been an interesting one, a lot to get through. So we'll try to get through them as quick as we can. Let us know your thoughts and opinions. As always, we would be really interested to know. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, hit that like button, subscribe if you're new around here. Make sure to go and download make sure you go download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. We'll be back in the week for the preview show, of course, as well as touching on those games that take place on Tuesday night. If I'm not here on Wednesday, after we've lost to Salford, you probably have a good idea as to why, really. But look, we'll see you in that one. You've been listening to Luke Payne. I have been Jordan Richards. This has been the League 2 Lowdown, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care for now.